So there's going to be a lot of that. Because if we're going to talk about like things one artist can do versus the other, right, then we kind of have to talk about whistles. How Mariah does the craziest runs and craziest vocal agility shit on whistles. It's nutty. It doesn't make any sense. It's super fun. Sorry, I'm editing the video and I just want to interject. I actually have found new papers on whistle register, and we're going to go over it on twitch.tv this Saturday. It's going to be 12 p.m. PST to 5 p.m. PST. Whistle register, you actually have to adjust your folds to create like a pursed shape in the shape of a whistle. What you got to remember is that the vocal folds of the average like soubrette woman about the size of a dime when they're put together. That's really tiny. So you're creating these tiny little whistles openings in your vocal folds. It's insanely precise, not easy. And be able to do that and then just control the pitch. Absolutely nuts. To do it with a lot of mobility the way that she does. Interesting that she does the run different. She adds nasality here, and that makes it easier to move around. It also could be an artistic decision to get a little bit more attitude in the sound. Like this is something that punk singers do all the time. I'll say the queen, she ain't no human being, right? Nasalized to get that gritty sound. And then she started doing this, I think later, where she gets up close to the mic and uses the proximity effect. Proximity effect does is it boosts the low end. So if your low notes are kind of vanishing, you don't want to disappear, you can get up close to the mic and it'll boost the lower frequencies. I have a low cutoff here, but even then you can kind of hear how the low frequencies boost a little bit. Not out of nowhere. This is like a really well understood basic. This is like audio engineering 101. As an example from mixingmonster.com, you're going to see, I'm going to get an EQ graph that's going to show lows and mids, and you're going to see real quick 100, and so that bumps when you get close to the mic. Now, we call that mud oftentimes, so it's not like it's clean, but it will make it louder. One of the things that Mariah prioritizes a lot when she does her runs is the line, is the elegance, is legato. So unlike Beyonce, where Beyonce is actually trying to lean into the dynamic differences, oftentimes Mariah goes out of her way to avoid it, including pulling back the mic, which is obviously something, you know, something of course Beyonce has done. People do that. But look at how often, how much Mariah does it. Like down, it's almost like she's playing a trumpet, nah, like nah, like she's jiggling her head a little bit. Hard to see because of the resolution, but look at it again and look out for that. It's super cool. Like this woman's got tricks. It's so cool. And these are things that as a classical musician, like you don't consider the microphone, right? And to get it to that level where you're actually like almost tromboning this shit, really cool. Segment 5. I want to be bored, like as an like intellectual conceptually, I want to be bored by whistles, but I'm not. At least not when Mariah does it, because I think there's a musical decision behind it, which makes it so rewarding. Love this grit in contrast with the whistle. This is the thing, again, Mariah is so good at with her runs, is she takes you on a musical journey. Here we have the grit and in contrast sandwiched between two whistles. Super cool use of technique to actually get to some place that's like artistic. I think it's really enjoy segment, whatever the next segment is. So you're in the audience, okay? Make so much noise. Look at the people who are going to watch it on YouTube who can't afford to go to these concerts, okay? All right? Think about, I know you paid $500 to go to the concert, all right? But I can't use this clip. Think about me. That's a reasonable ask. This is so good. Out of here with that, man. Like, so and one of the things we covered before with Beyonce was that the articulations being of heavy emphasis. Mariah's do that on whistles. What? Huh? Just unbelievable. Super good. The other thing too is, again, what we talked about before is this little tiny opening, just this little tiny one in the vocal folds. So she's doing this to where the pitch is also remarkably accurate for such a difficult technique. When you add more emphasis, you're changing the vocal folds in terms of the thickness. So oftentimes you're getting like just a change in pitch that's really subtle and is corrected over time. But because she's being really percussive with it, we're going to see that some of the notes they're fine. Like they're just not like cent perfect. Cent being 1/100th of a half step. So, and she even corrects the high note as she goes into it. This is normal. This is like physics, right? Like to a certain degree, you can't expect perfection on it. But it's just, what was impressive to me is it's so clean. It's almost imperceptibly, it's basically perfectly on pitch. Might as well be. So close. That's wild. And this is going to be the next segment here, where this is. It's similar to the rainbow. What I love, and this is a good example of, even in these little moments, break up phrasing in terms of like, the parts. You got your A, B articles, and it's often, phrases are often named after like language. So there are multiple parts to a phrase. Every single time Mariah starts a run, you can almost picture the end destination, which is good phrasing. So listen how elegant it is. Don't focus on how many notes there are on a row. No one cares. If you care about that, you're just not good enough to care about anything else. Right? It's cool if you're like year 5, year 6 into singing, you're like, and no one's taught you about, maybe longer if no one's taught you about vowels or placement or whatever, or you haven't figured that out yet. But like lots of notes really back and forth, like right in front of one another, is just good basic fundamentals. But being a good musician about it is much more difficult. The articulation, elegant. It's elegant. That's my favorite one, because this is my favorite one because this is the one you can tell that there's an end destination to the phrase. So it's so beautifully legato. Wonderful. Super, super, super good. What's difficult about it is not the notes, it's these articulations. Fly, fly, fly. That growing at fly, right? It makes it much more difficult to go to the next note. So if I'm doing like Handel, right? If I do like Thou Shalt Break Them or something like that, with it, just there's so many runs in that one, right? Like a potter's vessel. I can do that a bunch of different ways, but I have to get really specific about my articulations. I have to get really specific about it. How am I going to grow into these notes, right? Specifically also after there's a part of the aria where you just go, thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel, like a potter's vessel. Being very, very quiet in the beginning there is great because it's in contrast to the thou shalt dash them, right? And so you get all of these different options if you're going to be a musician about it. I get so much out of listening to Mariah and Beyonce. Like, it actually makes me a little misty. That when you slow these down, you could go part by part, talk about what they're doing, because they're so specific, because they're artists. They're crafting the phrase. They're so attentive to detail. It's miraculous. It's so good to watch. This is so... Here's the next segment. This is so someone's asking in the chat, and this is a really good question. Do you keep your larynx neutral or do you runs? Well, it depends. Look at what Mariah is doing here when she juts her jaw forward. What she's doing is she's allowing room for the larynx to go up. It's like a small thing that jump forward allows the larynx to go up, and it allows the note to be a lot lighter. So the answer is it depends on what you're trying to do. Generally speaking, you're going to want like less of an extremely lowered larynx, because you want the folds to be more pliable. So you're not going to be as loud when you're doing runs as you would be when you're like belting or when you're doing a really big high note, because your folds aren't going to be as thick as they are, because they need to move. Your folds need to move very quickly, right? This is a great example of that. Get out of here, man! Come on! That's a great example of like that is actually really fast. She lightens up to achieve that, right? Whistle. It's just preposterous. That's just ridiculous. Also, one of the things too is this. So this is why I love listening to Mariah for musicianship. The first part of that is ooh, ooh, or whatever it is. She does that 3 times, but she grows it each time, and they cut it off here in the video a little bit. Ooh, right? So she's phrasing the little chunks and putting it in the context of the bigger phrase. It's very, very, very specific. And that's why it's like, it's cool to have fast notes, but whatever. It's once you learn how to do it, it's not that hard, and you should be able to do it. You should be running scales. You should be going, you know, E, A, E, 10 years, okay? I've just done that for so many years. I'm bored, okay? They're scales. They're not hard. But phrasing them, that's the difference. I worked with personal accompanist for Jan Ignatius, is the conductor for the Met, conductor for the Philharmonic, super famous conductor, probably one of the most in-demand conductors in the world. And his personal accompanist I brought a niece to an audition for a gig that we were putting on together, and I love this one. Okay, this is one of my favorite stories. The niece was like, you know, she was like the child prodigy, right? Everyone around her was building her up because she was really disciplined. She worked really hard. Okay, but she hadn't met someone like Mark. So Mark is like, after the audition, he sits her down and he's like, the way that you're phrasing this, I don't particularly like it. I'm not going to hire you for the gig, but I do want to teach you how to do this. And the mother was like this obnoxious soccer mom. The niece is great, but the mother is obnoxious. This obnoxious soccer mom is like, yeah, okay, oh, whatever. My daughter's perfect. You don't know what you're talking about. Right? Like just having a conniption. Mark just sits down. He's like, every time you do a scale, you have to phrase. And he does a scale. It's just a 2-octave scale. And the mother just goes like, oh my God, whoa. So like I say I'm bored with scales, but I got to find a way to figure out how to fall in love with it all over again, because I'm not phrasing my scales. Mariah is. That's the difference, right? That's the difference. The love, the passion, the discipline, the attention to detail. Like that's the gap. I'm never impressed when there's just a lot of notes in a short period of time. It doesn't do anything for me, because that's never been hard for me to do that. Do you have good vowels? Do you have good technique? Is your singing efficient? You can move really fast then, and it's not a big deal. Yes, that was very quick. It's impressive. But I'm more interested in the artistic musicianship behind it. Right? The run, descend down is kind of cool, because musically, it's just kind of like a let go, like a sigh, just walking away from it. But she makes it so extra with all the notes. It's kind of fun.